Hello friends, welcome to the next video on Java programming from Go for eLearning. And in this video, we will see how to use for loop in Java. In my opinion, the for loop is the most common of all three types of loops. The Java for loop is used to iterate, or we can say repeat, a part of the program several times. If the number of iterations are fixed, it is recommended to use for loop. For loop is same as while loop or do while loop in a way that it executes the same code again and again until some condition is met. But in here, you have more control over your conditions. So what kind of for loops are there in Java? There are three types of for loop. First one is simple for loop. Second one is for each or enhanced for loop. And third one is labeled for loop. So first of all, we will discuss about simple for loop. Now let's see what is the basic syntax of for loop. So this is the basic syntax. Here just write the keyword for, and then you just write these round brackets and then curly braces, and in these braces you write your statements. And here in round brackets you can give three different elements. First of all, first expression is called init or initialization statements. Then second is your boolean expression, and third one is increment or decrement statements. So you can give these three elements inside your for loop. And please note that the semicolon after initialization and condition in for loop syntax. So the flow of control in a for loop is first the initialization step is executed first and only once. Please note this is execute first and only once. This step allows you to declare and initialize any loop control variables, and this step end with a semicolon. After that, next is boolean expression will be evaluated. If it is true, the body or we can say statements of the loop is executed. If it is false, the body of the loop will not be executed and control jumps to the next statement past the for loop. So once the body or we can say statements are executed, the control jumps back up to the increment or decrement statement in the for loop. This statement allows you to update any loop control variables. So this is a one complete cycle. After increment or decrement, the boolean expression will evaluate again. If it is true, the loop executes and the process repeats. Means first will execute body of the loop, then it will increment or decrement, then it will evaluate boolean expression. After the boolean expression is false, the for loop will terminate. So this is all about the flow for loop. Same we can see in the flow chart of for loop also. After this, now let's see the program to understand it better how simple for loop works. So this is the program which runs for statement loop 5 times, and each time it prints the value of I. Note that the variable I is not visible anywhere else since it is declared within the for loop. Means this variable is visible only inside the for loop. So first of all, inside your for loop, we can define this integer value. For example, int I equal to 0 and then semicolon, and then you can check the condition which is I should be less than 5, and then the third condition is the increment the variable value like this, means increase by 1. So this is for loop. If we compare for loop with while loop, we have three things. First one is initialization, which you have done outside whenever you were using while loop, and then your expression which will give you true or false, which comes in between, and then increment which you were doing inside your while loop means after the statement execution, but in for loop you can do it here, right? Whenever you are declaring for loop. Okay, so in this way you have more control over your code, and then you can just print the value of I, which is this one by one based upon the value update. So after this, now we will run the program. It prints the value of I 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so how it works? Correct? First of all, for loop initialize your variables. For example, I equal to 0, and then it checks this expression whether value of I is less than 5 or not. So because we have initialized by 0, so 0 is less than 5, which is true, then it executes your statement and it will print the value of I, that is 0, and then it increments the value of I by 1, which makes the value of I is equal to 1, that is 0 plus 1 is equal to 1. And again we'll check the condition, which is 1 is less than 5. So this is true. So it will print the value of I, which is 1. And then it will increment again the value of I by 1. So I becomes 2. 2 is also less than 5. It will just print the value again and again. So it will print the value of I till 4, because after 4 plus 1 it will increment to 5, and 5 is not less than 5. So condition will be false and execution will stop, right? So this is one way of using for loop. But there is one more way of using for loop, is Java for each loop, and which is like this. This is the syntax of for each loop. If you are using specifically array, then this more easy to use this expression for loop. So declaration are same, but in the case of arrays, just directly use this array here. So for example, you can just write int element. This is your name of the variable, which will hold the value one by one, right? And then you can give this colon here, and then you can give the name of your array, for example, like this. So what this expression is doing is it will go over your array one by one, and it will store the value of this array one by one. So first, when this loop will start, the value in the increment or the value which will be saved in this element will be 200, and then once again it will loop, and then value become 31 here, and then value become 26, then value become 52 and 42. It will wait over your array, and one by one it will transfer the value of this element, and then you can access this element like this. For example, you can just print this here like this, and now we will run this program. It print the value like this. Okay, this is other way of using for loop if you have arrays to access the values, right? Here comes the array, and it will transfer one by one your element values in this element, and then you can access this element one by one whenever loop will iterate over the array. Okay, so this is intelligent way of iterate over arrays using for loop. So this is the second way of using for loop. Now we will discuss the third way of using for loop, that is Java labeled for loop. In this way, we can have name of each for loop. To do so, we use label before the for loop like this. First label name and then for loop. It is useful if we have nested for loop so that we can break continue specific for loop. And we'll see this is the example which shows how label for loop works. Here there is a first for loop whose label name is AA, and one more for loop which is nested in the first for loop whose label name is BP. We can see in the program here, in first for loop we are initializing I equal to 1 and checking the condition I less than equal to 3, then increment. This is outer for loop, and another nested for loop, inner for loop. Here we are initializing the value of j which is equal to 1, then j less than equal to 3 and j increment by 1. And inside this for loop we are checking one condition. If I value equal to 2 and j value equal to 2, then it will break a first, or we can say outer for loop. Break AA. AA is the label for the outer for loop. Now let's run this program. So the output is this. So how it works? In first for loop, I value is initialized with 1 and then it is checking 1 is less than or equal to 3, which is true. Then it will go inside your inner for loop and it will check j variable and it will initialize j equal to 1 and it will check j is less than equal to 3, means 1 is less than equal to 3. So condition is true, so it will print the value of I and j. Then j value again increment, then j value is 2 which is also less than or equal to 3. So it will again print value of I and j. Now value of I is 1 and j is 2. Then after that it will increase to 3 and then again 3 equal to 3, which condition is true. So again it will print 1 and 3. So after this it will again increment to 4, but here condition will be false because 4 is greater than 3. So it will come out from this for loop and it will go to the again to the outer for loop. Here it will increase the value of I by 1. So I become 2 and which is less than equal to 3. So it is true. So again it will come to the inner for loop and again same cycle will happen. So it will print I value is 2 and j value is 1 because it is first initialized with 1. So j value right now is 1. So after that j value is again increased, it become 2. So if you see here, there is one condition. If I equal to 2 and j equal to 2, then outer for loop should break. So execution will be stop here. So the program terminates. So this is the output. So this is all about for loop. I hope you understand the basic concept of for loop and hope you like this video. So thank you for watching and please subscribe my channel